Constitution of 1963. The first, a republican form of government. The Constitution gave Nigeria a republican form of government based on elections to political positions in government. So this was the Constitution that made Nigeria a republic, free from a sovereign nation, free from external control, based on elections to political positions in government. Another merit of this Constitution is we had an elected president. The Queen of England ceased to be Nigeria's head of state, and an elected president became the head of state. We had an homemade constitution, a constitution that was made for us. So the first Republican Constitution was fully a homemade constitution, that is, it was made by Nigerians for Nigerians. There was no foreign control over this Republican Constitution, so it was a homemade constitution, fully homemade constitution. We also have the final court of appeal. The Supreme Court became the final court of appeal in the country. So unlike what we had in the Independence Constitution of 1960, whereby the Privy Council in London was the highest court of appeal, now under the first Republican Constitution, the Supreme Court became the first and became the final court of appeal in the country. Fundamental human rights. The rights of citizens were fully entrenched and guaranteed in the first Republican Constitution. So under the first Republican Constitution, there was entrenchment of the fundamental human rights of citizens. The rights of citizens were fully recognized, it was entrenched, and it was guaranteed under the first Republican Constitution. This is also a similar feature of the Independence Constitution of 1960. The rights of the citizens were fully entrenched, and it was recognized, and it was equally guaranteed. Powers of judicial review. The Supreme Court was given the power to check the excesses or unconstitutional actions of the executive and the legislature. So the Supreme Court had the power to check the excesses or the unconstitutional actions or abuse of power by the executive and the legislative arm of government. So the Supreme Court was given the power of judicial review. Political participation. Nigerians were now fully involved in the decision-making process of the country. Unlike what we had in the pre-independence constitutions, whereby, the people making the laws are more Europeans than Nigerians. And so, Europeans are making laws for Nigerians to follow. So, we have a situation whereby Nigerians are not fully making laws. They are not fully involved in the law-making process of their country, or lawmaking process that affects them. So under the first Republican Constitution of 1960, Nigerians were now fully involved in the decision-making process of the country. Free from external interference. Britain's undue external influence on the country ceased. So Britain no longer had influence on the country. They could no longer interfere in the affairs of the country anymore, and this is why we declared Nigeria a republic in 1963, because that was the time when Nigeria was free from external control and was a sovereign nation, a nation that could stand on its own. And with this, we've come to the end of this class. In the course of this class, we looked at some of the advantages or the merits or the achievements of the first Republican Constitution of 1960. We talked about the fact that the Privy Council in London was no longer the highest court of appeal. We now had our own Supreme Court. We were free from external control of Britain. The Queen was no longer the head of state. There was the fundamental human rights of citizens were entrenched in the Constitution, and many more. And with this, we've come to the end of this class, and I'll see you at the next class.